Okay, so welcome everyone. This session on a lot of the cool new features that we've got coming up in our summer release of Safran Risk. So all I've got is one quick slide, and then I want to jump straight into the product to show you some of the features we've got coming. Okay. So in total, in the summer release, we've already implemented over 30 new features and a number of bug fixes as well. And we're adding lots more all the time. That's features, not the bugs, obviously. So what I've shown you here is just a few of the highlights that we've got coming in the new release. So starting at the top, we've got probabilistic branching and existence. Now, you can actually do both of those today in the current 7.3 release, but you do have to do a little bit of scripting, and we're very aware that not everyone is comfortable with that. So we've put a nice Safran Risk style user interface on top of both those pieces of functionality, and I'll show you them in action very shortly. Next, something we have requested quite a lot was, okay, I can add my activity uncertainties, my 3-point estimates to my project, but what I can't do is currently to correlate those activity uncertainties. And we heard that quite a lot, so that's also coming in the summer release. Moving on to the cost module. So we released the initial version of the cost module about 2 years ago, and during that time we've received a lot of enhancement requests. So what we've done is to batch them all together, and we'll be releasing kind of a cost module 2.0 as part of 21.1. Second from last of the main highlights is a brand new import. So you've heard a lot today about the quality of bringing in a good schedule, and you'll probably hear more about that later on. So we're aware that the first thing you see when you open up Safran Risk, for example, to run a schedule analysis is the import. So we wanted to make it a very simple, easy to use, accurate and incredibly fast import. So we've developed it from the ground up, and again I'll give you a brief look at that in a moment. And finally, you'll be hearing more as the day goes on about the new Safran Risk Manager product that we released a little while ago. So it only makes sense that we should release some integration to that, so you can take any relevant risks from the Risk Manager application and bring them into Safran Risk for a more detailed quantitative analysis. Okay, so that's enough of the slides. I personally am far happier in product anyway, so let's jump straight in and have a look at 21.1. So it looks pretty similar to 7.3 on the surface, but what I'll start by showing you is probabilistic branching. So I've actually already opened up my incredibly complicated construction project. It's actually a bit similar to the one Alex was talking about earlier, I think, where we're doing some digging and we're removing some topsoil. And while we're digging, there's 3 possible outcomes here. In terms of what we might find in terms of archaeological remains. So there's one outcome is we don't find anything. It's a great result, we can carry on. The next is we find some that need expert removal, and that's going to take a bit longer. And finally, we find some that can be discarded. Okay. So in the current release, I'd have to write a little bit of scripting to model that situation, but now I can simply go into risk mappings, select my activity that we branch from, in this case remove topsoil, and I can switch to my new probabilistic branch tab, and I can create a new branch by just checking this box, and it presents me with the possible successors, the possible branches. And in this case, I'm going to say that actually 60% of the time we're going to continue. There's no remains found. That's great. We can carry on. 30% of the time, there's remains found that need to be discarded. And 10% of the time, it's going to take a bit longer because we need to perform some kind of expert removal. Okay, so that's all we have to do now. Check a box and enter a couple of percentages, and away we go. So let's run the analysis now. and I'll step through a couple of iterations to just show you what's happening here. So on this first iteration, you can see we took this branch where we need to perform some expert removal. On the next branch, we didn't find anything, and that's great. And again, and this time we found some that can be discarded. Okay, so I won't step through all these. I'll just continue through to show you the outcome. So here, when we look at the outcome, the distribution graph here, you can clearly see those three outcomes. So the large spike here is where we haven't found any remains. The medium one is where we found some that can be discarded. And then pushing the project out about a month is where we need to perform some expert removal. Okay, nice and simple, nice and simple. So that's probabilistic branching. I'm going to move on quite quickly so I can get through all this. So the next example is how do we do existence in this new version? Well, let's flip back to the schedule here. And let's say that, for argument's sake, this remove subsoil activity. So we remove the topsoil, and maybe 40% of the time, we don't need to remove the topsoil. It's magically vanished. Perhaps not a real world scenario, but you get the idea. So I want to create some existence risk around this removal of subsoil. So to do that, I go to project risks. I'm going to create a new risk that I'll call subsoil. And now from my risk type selection, you'll see I've actually got two new risk types here, non-existence and probabilistic branching. So I'm going to select non-existence. But before I finish this, I will point out that what happened here, when I created that branch in risk mappings, it automatically creates a read-only risk here to show you that you have got a probabilistic branching risk in your model. And this comes back to our main ethos of keeping all the risks together in one centralized place. Okay, but moving back to existence. So I'm going to say this subsoil, we want to get rid of that, let's say it's 40% of the time, okay? So now all I have to do once I've created my existence risk, go to risk mappings, find my subsoil risk, and map it to the removal of subsoil. So now when I analyze and I step through, you'll see this remove subsoil activity will only exist for 60% of the time. There we go. Okay, easy, right? So that's probabilistic branching and existence, and as we said, not a script in sight. So let's move on to that one of those requested features that we heard a lot of, the activity uncertainties and how you can correlate those. And this is good because this gives me an opportunity to actually talk about a couple of the other features we've got that haven't made this kind of top 6 list. So I'm just going to switch it on here. So you can see in my current schedule, I've got 2 activities here that have some uncertainty on them. Remove topsoil has a triangular distribution between 10 and 30 days, and remove subsoil uniform of between 15 and 30 days. So one nice feature in this new release is that you can actually create these distributions directly in risk mappings. Previously, you had to do it in the schedule. So now you can create them straight in here to make your lives a bit easier. You don't have to keep switching screens as much. Okay. So another nice feature is that actually we've now allowed you to blend these estimate uncertainty risks with activity uncertainties. So before you had to switch between either or. Now you can actually combine your estimate uncertainties with the estimate uncertainty risks with your activity uncertainties in the same analysis. Okay. But moving back to the whole point of this, which was how do we correlate them? So now we have our 3-point estimates. We can go across the correlations, and you'll notice that now we've got this new type in here called uncertainty, and I can see my remove topsoil and my remove subsoil activities, and I simply go in and I specify the correlation coefficient there between the 2 values. So here I'm saying that the removal of the topsoil and the subsoil is 80%. correlated. Okay, so that is how you can correlate activity uncertainties in the new release. Let's talk a little bit about the new cost module changes. So for that, I'm just going to switch to one of my samples that actually has costs in, as that would be quite useful. Okay, so there's, as I said, there's a lot of big changes that we've made to the cost module. The first one I want to mention is the cost breakdown structure. So a lot of people said they love the fact that we've got a cost breakdown structure and you can create one in the tool very easily. But what they really wanted to do was to be able to split the costs by different cost breakdown structures. So they might indeed want to see the costs, as you can see here, split by materials, labor, and other, for example. But they were saying, well, we also want to see these costs divided by our subcontractors, for example, and grouped by those subcontractors. So now in this release, we're actually in grouping, we're allowing you to create as many different cost breakdown structures as you like, so an unlimited number. So here, if you look at the costs I've got broken down at the moment, if I switch to subcontractors, you can see I've now got a very different set, well, all the same cost items, but they're all aggregated into these different buckets, these subcontractor grouping. Okay, so that's a big change to the breakdown structure. Next, we're allowing you now to add as many kind of cost user fields as you like. So before we just had kind of base and quantity. So now this will be renamed to cost fields. In here, you'll be able to go in and add as many of your own user-defined cost fields as you like. Here I've got one called original cost that I've added. And the nice feature about these user fields is that you can then go in and you can specify your own formulas for how they're calculated. So the default, I think, is base multiplied by value, but here I've changed it to be base plus the value of this item. But obviously it can be any formula you like. And in addition to that, once you've created these cost fields, they're given automatically given a distribution column as well. So you can then put any kind of spread you like around all your own user fields. Okay. And actually something that's in development as we speak, and I was hoping to be able to show it to you today, but it just wasn't quite ready yet, is we're going to allow you to make these costs, one of these costs, an actual value as well. So you can then split your sunk or actual costs and your remaining costs. And then you'll also be able to look at them in isolation and combined in all the output reports as well. And we've heard a lot of requests for that. So that's coming in this release too. Okay, so there's a lot more in the cost module, but I will definitely run out of time. So let me very quickly move on to show you the new import routine that we have. So as I said, the idea here was to make it as simple to use as possible. So if you're familiar with the current one, it's quite a busy dialog. So in the new one, all you do is specify the location of the file. I'm using a P6 sample here. Tell it what calendar unit or planning units you want to use. If you have any uncertainty in the project, you can include that. And that's it. That's all you do. And then save it and it's in. So that was obviously incredibly fast, but this project I think is only, let's wait for it to just display, but I think it's about 100 and something activities, 132 activities. So not huge. But what I will mention is that we've tested this on a project with 170,000 activities on a laptop, not on a supercomputer. And that came in 6 minutes using the new import. So the same project took hours to take into P6 itself. So I'm hoping that's for people like Mac, that's going to be, and the rest of you dealing with mega projects and using the real data, that's going to be a very useful feature for you. Okay, the final thing is our integration to Risk Manager. So because you haven't seen Risk Manager yet, I'm not going to show you that, but I will just say that if you have access to Safran Risk Manager, then you will have the option here, a new option, to allow you to actually import the risks from Risk Manager, from Risk Manager into Safran Risk for that quantitative analysis. Okay, that's all on the product. I've just got one final slide, and then I'll hand to Chris. So you might be wondering where we get our ideas from, or how you can be part of our development roadmap. So there are a number of places we kind of listen for this information. The first is our relatively new Safran Risk Improvements Forum. And I'll show you that very quickly if my internet plays ball. And if you're under current support contract, I would encourage you to participate in this forum. It not only allows you to create new items, but you can also vote on the existing ones. So here you can see we have, out of the ones we have in here at the moment, we already have 5 that are planned and 1 that's currently in progress. So yeah, please be part of that. The second route, of course, is events like today, where we get together with various thought leaders and industry experts. And the final main kind of channel is the learning sessions that we run regularly, and of course all the various customer interactions that we have. But for more on that, I'm going to now hand over to Chris. Chris, are you there?